When you stop responding, the first thing that hits her isn't pain, it's confusion. At that point, she's not devastated, not yet, but her mind begins to stir. Something doesn't feel right. She checks her phone, not because she's desperate, but because something feels incomplete. There was a rhythm to the way you interacted, a certain consistency, even if it was subtle. When that rhythm breaks, she notices it. Even if she doesn't want to admit it, she starts by rationalizing. Maybe he's busy, maybe he didn't see it, maybe I said something that sounded off. That's how it begins, innocently, logically. But the human mind doesn't like uncertainty, especially when emotions are involved. So she goes back and rereads the messages once, then twice, then a third time. She's not looking for information, she's looking for reassurance. She wants to find a reason that makes her feel in control of what's happening, because control is what she's starting to lose. That's the thing. People always think it takes a big event to shake someone. But often, it's silence that unravels them. Not knowing why someone you were once connected to suddenly goes quiet. It plants a seed of doubt, and doubt spreads like wildfire. Her thoughts spiral into overanalysis. Did she take too long to reply last time? Was her last message too short, too cold, too forward? She begins to dissect her tone, her timing, even her. None of it seems right anymore, because none of it gave her what she expected. A response. What confuses her the most isn't your absence, it's the fact that you were once present. And when you pull that away, it creates a vacuum that her mind rushes to fill. She doesn't want to feel like she's chasing someone, but she also doesn't want to believe she was easy to discard. That tension pulls her apart internally. She may still appear calm on the surface, but inside, there's a storm forming. It's not yet about loss, it's about uncertainty. And uncertainty is often more tormenting than clarity. Eventually, confusion becomes obsession. She may not reach out, but you're in her thoughts frequently. She plays it cool, but she checks your status. She notices whether you've been online. She picks up on the tiniest cues, trying to decode your silence. And the worst part? She won't admit it to anyone, not even herself. She'll say she's over it, that she doesn't care, but deep down, she's still trying to answer one question: why did he stop responding? And in that silent question, you gain more power than you ever had with words. She'll tell herself she doesn't care. She'll repeat it in her head like a mantra. She'll say it out loud to her friends with that casual shrug, that rehearsed tone, the one designed to convince everyone around her, especially herself, that she's unaffected, that she's too strong to miss anyone, too independent to be waiting on a mess. But here's the thing about pretending not to care. It's often the clearest sign that someone does. When a woman really doesn't care, she doesn't speak about you. She doesn't bring your name up, not even in passing. She doesn't scroll through your photos, doesn't listen to the playlist that reminds her of your conversations, doesn't pause at your old messages. Indifference is silent. It doesn't need to prove anything, but when she's trying to act like she's fine, when she over-explains, over-smiles, or makes pointed comments about how unbothered she is, that's where you know something deeper is going on. That performative indifference is a cover. It's a defense mechanism. And often, it kicks in because there's a war going on inside her. One part of her wants to stay detached, to protect herself from looking vulnerable. The other part is still searching for answers, still craving that closure, still hoping for some sign that you miss her too. She might post more, act more confident, or surround herself with people just to fill the void, but the void is still there. She's not pretending for you, she's pretending for herself. She's trying to build distance between how she feels and what she wants to feel. And the truth is, that gap between the pain she's hiding and the strength she's projecting is where she starts to break down. Not all at once, slowly, silently. She becomes more reactive to small things. She loses a bit of joy in what used to comfort her. Because no matter how much she tries to push it down, real feelings have a way of surfacing when you least expect it. And eventually, she'll stop trying to convince the world she doesn't care. Because what starts as an act over time becomes exhausting to maintain. That's when silence starts to speak the loudest. There's a moment in the quiet, often unnoticed by everyone else, where she starts to replay everything. Not out loud, not in conversation, but in her mind. When she's alone, when the distractions run out, and when silence finally catches up with her, that's when the overthinking begins. It's not because she wants to suffer, it's because something still matters deeply and her mind won't let it rest. She replays the things you said, the tone of your voice, your last interaction, the things left unsaid. She questions whether you were serious, if there was something she missed, or if you've already moved on. And here's the paradox. She tells herself she's fine during the day, but at night the questions come back stronger. Her brain starts to analyze patterns. Why haven't you reached out? What did your silence really mean? Did she matter at all, or was she just passing time in your story? These aren't questions she wants to ask, but they come anyway. That's how the mind works when there's unfinished emotional business. It doesn't wait for permission. It searches relentlessly for meaning, for certainty, for something solid to stand on when the emotional ground underneath is shaking. She may keep functioning, go to work, meet her friends, smile at the right moments, but it's all mechanical now. Because while she's out there trying to live like she's unaffected, her mind is still trapped in a cycle of emotional replays. It's exhausting. It wears her down in ways no one sees. That's the cost of pretending everything is okay when it's not. She doesn't want to reach out first because she's afraid of being dismissed. But every day she waits, without hearing from you, the doubt inside her grows louder. And this is the part where many people misunderstand her silence. They think it's cold, calculated, or that she's moved on. But what's really happening is that she's stuck between wanting to move forward and being held back by the weight of everything unresolved. She thinks if she can figure it out, if she can just make sense of how and why things changed, then maybe she can finally breathe. But emotions don't always give you answers. Sometimes they just sit there raw and unresolved, reminding you of what used to be and making you question your own worth. The most telling sign that she hasn't truly let go is that she's still trying to understand what went wrong in the quietest parts of her day, and that's silent overthinking. It's not indifference. It's the evidence that something still echoes in her heart. One of the most revealing signs that she still feels something is when she suddenly starts bringing up your name in random conversations. It doesn't have to be obvious. In fact, it rarely is. She might casually mention something you once said or refer to a place you both went together, masked under the illusion of small talk or a funny memory. But underneath that mention is a thread that connects her present to a part of her past she's not quite ready to bury. When someone is truly over you, they erase your presence from their vocabulary. They don't talk about you, even indirectly. They move on without needing to revisit what was. But when she starts referencing you, even lightly, it means there's still emotional residue lingering in her system. It's not always a cry for attention. Sometimes it's involuntary. Sometimes she doesn't even realize she's doing it. That's how deeply intertwined emotions can be with memory. You become part of the background music in her mind, and you find your way into her words without her consciously choosing it. When people talk about someone they claim to have forgotten, it's often because they haven't. They're still trying to process, still trying to sort through the mess of emotions left behind. And sometimes mentioning your name is their way of feeling closer without having to face the risk of reaching out directly. This pattern also shows up in the way she speaks about relationships in general. She might start asking friends deeper questions, questions about love, loyalty, regret, or emotional safety. Not because she's randomly curious, but because she's trying to make sense of her own experience. She's looking for answers without admitting she's still looking. That's the duality of someone who misses you but doesn't want to seem like they do. She'll pose it as general conversation, but listen closely and you'll hear the personal undertone behind her words. There's also a strange comfort in bringing you up, even if it's brief. For her, it's a way to keep something alive without confronting it head on. It's safer that way, less vulnerable. She gets to feel your presence without actually having to bridge the silence. And that might go on for a while, this dance between memory and pride, between longing and self-protection. So when her voice slips your name into a conversation, don't dismiss it. Don't assume it's random. It's never just a name. It's a trace of something unresolved, a sign that part of her still hasn't let go, even if she wants everyone to think otherwise. When she begins to sense that you're slipping away emotionally, something interesting happens. She might have spent days or even weeks appearing aloof, silent, maybe even cold. But then there's a subtle shift. The same woman who seemed distant might start indirectly bringing up memories or moments that matter, not because she suddenly wants to reconnect, but because a deeper realization is surfacing inside her, one that's hard for her to admit even to herself. She remembers how you used to make her feel, not in grand, exaggerated ways, but in simple, grounding moments that gave her a sense of emotional safety. And when she realizes those are now gone, replaced by silence and absence, that's when her inner world begins to stir in ways she can no longer ignore. You see, people don't usually appreciate peace until chaos arrives. And for her, the chaos isn't loud, it's the silence. It's the fact that the person she assumed would always be there no longer reacts, no longer reaches out, no longer tries to fix what's broken. And that space where your energy used to live in her life becomes more noticeable than your presence ever was. At first, she might try to rationalize it. She'll convince herself that she's better off, that she's stronger alone, that maybe you were too much. But over time, it's not logic that speaks to her, it's memory, emotion, the contrast between what you were and what's missing now. This is often the moment where she begins to test the waters, not with words, but with actions that appear harmless. Watching your stories, asking mutual friends about you, accidentally liking a post, sending a short message with no real purpose. It's not about what's said, it's about whether you'll respond, whether you still care, whether you're still reachable. Because if you are, it soothes her fear. But if you're not, it begins to burn. Because now, the person she once thought would never stop caring has become the one who finally did. And that's where something deeper happens inside her. She realizes she may have underestimated what you meant to her. And that recognition doesn't just sting, it lingers. It makes her question her own choices, her own reactions, and most of all, her silence. The absence of your effort becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. And when that recognition settles, it starts to change how she sees the entire situation. Not as a story where she had the upper hand, but as a wake-up call that what she lost wasn't just someone who cared, but someone who chose her when he didn't have to. That's when she feels it. Not just the weight of your absence, but the gravity of her choices. There comes a point when the silence you thought was strength starts to sound like regret. If she's truly beginning to feel your absence, one of the most telling signs is a sudden shift in her energy. It's subtle at first. She's less confident, more distracted, and emotionally unsettled. You might hear from mutual friends that she's been asking about you, trying to gauge where you stand, what you're thinking, or if you've moved on. That's not just curiosity. That's emotional dissonance creeping in. That's the beginning of internal chaos. You see, emotional detachment doesn't always happen in one clean break. Often it's a performance held together by pride. At first she's convincing herself she's better off, free, unbothered. But when that performance no longer matches the reality of how she feels, something cracks. That's when she starts projecting. Maybe she posts more frequently, indirectly trying to communicate with you. Maybe her posts carry double meanings, quotes about letting go or healing, but wrapped in pain she won't admit. This isn't just random, it's a signal. And while it might look like confidence on the surface, underneath it she's battling a deepening confusion. If walking away was the right decision, then why does it feel so wrong? And when that confusion grows strong enough, it leads to overthinking. She replays your last conversations, re-examines your flaws and then her own. She questions whether she misjudged you or acted impulsively. Her ego tells her not to reach out, but her heart is exhausted from pretending. And so the conflict intensifies. The space she once demanded now feels suffocating. The independence she celebrated starts feeling hollow. This is what drives her to the edge, not your silence, but the meaning she starts attaching to it. She starts believing that maybe you don't care. Maybe you've really moved on. And for someone who thought she had the upper hand emotionally, that realization is unbearable. At this point, she's in emotional limbo. She doesn't want to be the first to reach out because she's scared of rejection, of appearing weak. But she's also running out of ways to hide the growing void inside her. She can't stay silent forever, not when her thoughts are screaming And that's the moment she'll either break the silence or make a move so obvious that it practically begs for your response. Her actions won't lie. When the inner conflict gets louder than her pride, you'll notice. You won't need to ask anyone or check her feed. You'll feel it. Through the way the energy shifts, how it pulls at you. Because when someone truly starts to miss you, the silence doesn't deepen, it trembles. And when it trembles long enough, it eventually breaks.